Mary Shelley, The Spark and the Shadow. It began with a storm, a dark summer night, thunder over Lake Geneva, and a young woman, barely 19, sitting awake with a restless mind. From that night's fevered imagination would emerge one of the most haunting creations in all of literature, Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, a tale of ambition, grief, and creation, born not from science, but from sorrow. Her name was Mary Shelley. She lived a life of love and loss, rebellion and resilience, and from its depths, she created a story that still defines the boundaries between human and divine, life and death, creation and destruction. This is the story of the woman who gave birth to a monster, and in doing so, revealed the soul of humanity itself. Mary Wollstonecraft, Godwin was born in London in 1797, into a household of radical thought and literary genius. Her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, was the pioneering feminist who wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, a voice for equality before it had a name. Her father, William Godwin, was a philosopher and political writer, famous for his ideas on justice and freedom. But Mary's first experience of life was loss. Her mother died just days after giving birth to her. The absence haunted her forever, an invisible wound that would echo through her imagination. Raised in her father's intellectual circle, Mary was surrounded by writers, thinkers, and reformers. She grew up on ideas as much as affection, taught to question, to read, to dream. Yet beneath that brilliance lay emotional isolation. Her father's remarriage created tension at home, and Mary often sought refuge in the graveyard where her mother was buried, reading, thinking, sometimes even writing beside the tomb. In that strange and sacred solitude, the seeds of her Gothic imagination began to take root. In 1814, at the age of 16, Mary met Percy Bysshe Shelley, a young poet who shared her father's radical ideals and his defiance of convention. Percy was already married, but the two were drawn together by an intensity of spirit and intellect that defied moral boundaries. They fled England together, a scandal that shocked society and broke her father's heart. Mary became an exile, living hand to mouth, wandering through Europe with Percy and her stepsister, Claire Claremont. They were young, idealistic, and poor, chasing the dream of a life devoted to art and freedom. But the dream was soon shadowed by tragedy. Their first child died in infancy. Mary wrote in her journal, "Dream that my little baby came to life again. I thought it had only been cold and that we rubbed it by the fire and it lived." That dream, that desperate wish to reverse death, would later find its way into Frankenstein. In the summer of 1816, Mary and Percy traveled to Lake Geneva to stay near their friend Lord Byron, the notorious poet whose fame and scandal filled Europe. It was a strange, stormy season. A volcanic eruption in Indonesia had cast ash across the world, dimming the sun and turning the year into what would be called the year without a summer. The skies were dark. The air was cold. Confined indoors by endless rain, Byron proposed they each write a ghost story. For nights they sat by the fire, speaking of spirits, science, and the mystery of life. Mary listened. Then one night she dreamed, a vivid vision of a man bent over a lifeless form, and of that form stirring to life beneath his hands. She awoke terrified and inspired. That dream became the birth of Frankenstein. Published in 1818, when Mary was just 20, Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, was unlike anything the world had seen. It was not just a Gothic horror story. It was a philosophical inquiry into creation, responsibility, and the loneliness of being misunderstood. Dr. Victor Frankenstein is not merely a scientist. He is a man driven by the hunger to transcend human limits. His creature, born of ambition, becomes a symbol of every being cast out for being different, unloved, and unwanted. The novel asks, what happens when the creator abandons their creation? It is at its heart not about monsters, but about the pain of rejection and the longing for connection. Mary Shelley had felt both. Her writing combined the emotional realism of personal loss with the intellectual daring of her parents' ideas. In creating the creature, she gave voice to all who have ever been forsaken. The world has called it the first work of science fiction, but it is also a profound meditation on the human soul. Mary's life after Frankenstein was marked by grief and endurance. Her children continued to die in infancy, one after another, until only one son, Percy Florence, survived. She and Percy wandered through Italy, seeking solace in the sun, but death followed them like a shadow. Then, in 1822, Percy Shelley drowned in a boating accident off the coast of Livorno. He was 29. Mary, only 24, was left a widow, heartbroken, penniless, and haunted by memories. She returned to England, determined to preserve his legacy. She edited and published his poems, ensuring the world would know his name. But she also continued to write, quietly, persistently. Her later novels, like The Last Man, 1826, imagined a world ravaged by plague, a vision eerily prophetic of modern fears. It was deeply personal too, a meditation on loneliness and survival after everyone she loved was gone. Though less celebrated than Frankenstein, her later works reveal a writer grappling with loss, resilience, and the fate of humanity itself. For much of her life, Mary Shelley's authorship of Frankenstein was questioned or minimized. Many assumed Percy had written it, or at least shaped it beyond recognition, but her voice, her intellect, her vision were unmistakable. Her journals, letters, and manuscripts reveal a mind that fused poetic sensitivity with philosophical depth. She was not merely Percy Shelley's wife, nor Godwin and Wollstonecraft's daughter. She was a creator in her own right. In an age that sought to define women by the men around them, Mary Shelley wrote her own definition, in ink and lightning. Mary spent her later years quietly in England, devoted to her surviving son and to maintaining the legacy of both her husband and her own work. Her health was fragile. She suffered from recurring illness, migraines, and depression. Yet she continued to write until the end, exploring themes of memory, identity, and endurance. She died in 1851, at the age of 53. When they opened her desk, they found locks of her dead children's hair and a piece of Percy Shelley's heart wrapped in silk. Mary Shelley's story is the story of creation, in every sense. She lived in a world that sought to confine women to silence, yet she dared to imagine a world where human beings could rival the gods. She wrestled with love, death, and loneliness, and transformed them into something immortal. Through Frankenstein, she gave us one of the most enduring myths of modernity, a mirror reflecting our own fears about power, isolation, and the price of ambition. More than 2 centuries later, her creature still walks among us, in science, in art, in every question we ask about what it means to be human. Mary Shelley was not simply the mother of science fiction. She was the mother of empathy in the age of creation. Her life was a storm, but from that storm came the spark that still lights the dark. Mary Shelley once wrote, "My dreams were all my own. I accounted for them to nobody. They were my refuge when annoyed, my dearest pleasure when free." Those dreams became her legacy. In her solitude, she found imagination. In her grief, creation. In her darkness, the light that endures. Mary Shelley's story reminds us that the most powerful act of creation is not just to give life, but to understand it. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more Behind the Pages videos.